Hi everyone, welcome to Everyday, your daily stop for virtual reality content. My name is D, and today I am continuing my Let's Play of The Knife of Dunwall, the DLC from Dishonored, following the adventures of Dowd, the assassin who murdered the Empress. And I am on my first mission, where I am planning to invade the Rothweil slaughterhouse to get information on a ship called the Delilah. Now, before I get started on that, I wanted to show you a few of the settings that I have here in vorpX and in Dishonored to make this game playable for certain values of playable. Certainly some of you would not be able to play this game at 20 frames a second like I am doing in certain sections of it where it's really bad. But anyway, let me show you what I've done. So if I hit delete, it brings up the vorpX settings. I've turned on 3D geometry mode, which enables me to get full stereoscopy as well as positional tracking. I've turned on, I've increased eye separation by a factor of 1.5, and I increased the camera height by 2. And both of these I did to make the scale of the world smaller. I find that by default it's too big. The objects look huge, the books look like the size of a small table. So both of these function to decrease the scale and make things look more the right size. Camera height modifier 2 also has some very pleasant side effects where, for example, when you're warping around or using dark vision, a rectangle appears in front of your face that's very blurry if you have this set at 0. And if you set it to 2, it puts your face above that rectangle so that you don't get the distortion of your view. It also puts your hands lower down in the view, and it can be really distracting to have your hands too high up in the view because they will tend to you'll tend to like focus really close on your hands and then really far away and then close on your hands and then far away, and it's just exhausting for your eyes. So you want those as far down in the view as you can get them, kind of out of sight. Those are the main things I set here. On the next page, so I've turned all this stuff for maximum performance. Fixed chromatic aberration, normally you want this on. So when I turn it on, if I have it off, I see colors in, especially near the edge of the frame. Think you'll get your own squad, and those are due to the colors near the edge of the frame are due to the chromatic aberration of the lenses inside the Oculus Rift. And if you turn on fixed chromatic aberration, it does a software correction for that, so that I no longer see those colored bands, or at least I see them to a much smaller degree. But for those of you watching on your monitor, which is like most of you, this actually introduces chromatic aberration to the video that you watch on your monitor, because it's adding that chromatic aberration to correct for the chromatic aberration of the lenses. So I'm going to leave this turned off for the sake of monitor viewers. Similarly, black smear is a technical hardware issue with the current version of the Oculus Rift, the screen that they're using. If you're looking at a really dark black surface and you move your head rapidly from side to side, you will see kind of a smearing effect of the black region into the colored region next to it. And if you turn this on, it will help to diminish that effect. Again, this interferes with the video viewing for people on their monitors, so I prefer to just leave that off for the sake of YouTube. But you probably want these on if you're playing it normally. Shader anti-aliasing improves the sub-pixel level detail and the anti-aliasing when you look around in the world. And if you can afford it, it's a good thing to turn on because it definitely makes things look better and look sharper. I'm going to leave it off because I just want to get the absolute maximum performance I can possibly get, because I need every frame. And that's all I've set here, except for this. This is actually important. Edge peak scale. So edge peak is this thing where I go in and out. When I go out, I can look at my whole screen from left to right, the top to bottom. And by default, it's set to be much larger, like this. And you have to look around a much larger area to use edge peak when it's in this mode. So I prefer to have it at a smaller size because the DK2 has plenty of resolution, so you can still see the whole screen quite clearly, even when it's at this scale, and I can fit it all in my field of vision more comfortably. So I like the smaller scale. It might be hard for you guys to see these vorpX settings on your monitor because the lenses are magnifying it for me. But when you're in the game, you can see this menu in front of me very clearly, even at this smaller edge peak scale. And finally, the final tab, input. This is a very important setting. So, HT sensitivity. Head tracking sensitivity is super important. So when I look to the right, you'll see I'm looking to the right in the game. When I look to the left, you'll see I'm looking to the left in the game. And when I turn all the way around, I'm looking behind me in the game. So this is all as it should be. If you do not configure your head sensitivity correctly, you will get weird effects. So let's say that I lower it from 1.43 to some super small number. And now, when I turn my head, I'm turned 90 degrees to the right, but Dowd has not turned his head as far as I have turned my head. And if I turn all the way around, I'm looking behind me, but Dowd's still looking kind of not quite all the way behind him. He's not looking as far as I'm looking. And that becomes even more dramatic if I lower this even lower. So if I turn it down to like 0.4, now I'm turning like this, and Dowd is still looking like barely off to the side. That's not right, and this is super uncomfortable. You'll feel like the world is stuck to your face and kind of dragging behind. Conversely, if you set this way, way too high, like say this, I'm going to put it to like 2.5. When you set it up this high, then I look around, I like turn like this, and I'm already looking behind me in the game, but I barely like turn to the side in real life. And some people like to play like this, but it's very disconcerting for me. I like the motions to match up exactly. Some people use this because they want to be able to spin around their character super fast, but I don't recommend it. I recommend you try and get the head tracking and the head tracking sensitivity so that your real motions match up to your character's motions exactly when you turn your head left and right. So I have mine at 1.43. It will depend on your specific value. No. I hit the wrong button because my head tracking sensitivity is too high. Oh god. Your head tracking. Come on, come on. Okay, thank God. Your head tracking sensitivity also controls how far the mouse moves when you move your head. So that can cause problems if it gets too high. This is also a very important setting. This is a new feature of vorpX, HT G3D Latency Enhancement. And what this does is in games that have a low frame rate, like this one, very low frame rate, this will make the latency that you feel when you move your head around feel much better. And they say it can cause glitches, and I don't know how it works, but it does seem to help quite a lot, so I definitely recommend it. They might be doing some kind of time warp or something. It's not entirely clear to me, but I rack it all the way up to 1, and it helps a lot.
Think you'll get your own squad after what happened last night?
All this other stuff is pretty much set to default. Now, the only other important settings I want to talk about are in the Dishonored settings. So I'm going to blink over here for a minute. I'm getting tired of this scenery. This is nicer. Okay. I'm going to go into the Dishonored settings. Graphics. So my graphics settings, you have to have full screen on. You have to have vertical sync on. You have to be 1920 1080 resolution. Okay, you don't have to be 1920 1080 resolution. You can set it higher, and you can get, if you add a 1440p mode to your Rift, then you can set the game to 1440p, and that will get you super sample anti-aliasing, which is great, except that the frame rate's already way too low, and so you don't want to do that. Like, you don't have a better machine than me, most likely, so I don't recommend trying to shoot for 1440p. Maybe in older games like Portal you can do that. You can lower the resolution to like 1280, 720, and that has a small effect on performance, but it's actually not that much because the internal render target that's used by vorpX still remains the same resolution. So I don't recommend that you mess with resolution. Just leave it at 1920 1080. I set brightness, so normally in the Rift you would set the brightness so that this first one is barely visible. So if I turn it like this, I can still see the first one. There, I can still see it just barely at this brightness setting. So it's very dark inside the Rift, and so you can get away with a much darker brightness setting. You can have more shadows, more subtlety in your environment, which is great. And the contrast ratio on the screen inside the Rift DK2 is great, so this definitely produces a better experience. For the purpose of you monitor watchers, I'm going to turn this up more towards the middle to a setting more like what I use on my monitor. There we go. FOV 65. So this might confuse you because you know you want the field of view to be very large when you're playing a game in the DK2. The reason I set this very low is because every time you you restore a save game or whatever, it actually resets the FOV to the FOV in your settings, and you have to press F4 again to put it back to 120. And so the farther it is away from 120, the easier it is for me to notice when it's wrong and hit that F4 key. So I just leave it set to the minimum to make it super obvious. And all this other stuff is just turned to minimum, so I can get the absolute maximum frame rate that's possible. Now there are a few settings over here that are very important. One of them is in mouse settings. This took me a while to figure out. You definitely want to turn off your mouse smoothing. You will have a bad time if you have mouse smoothing on. Weird things will happen, especially in low frame rate areas. Your head tracking sensitivity will be all over the place. You will have strange motions. Just turn it off and you will save yourself a lot of headaches. You also want auto aim off. You want aim assist off. You don't want anything screwing with your mouse position. You want your head to be in full control of that. And finally, in general, so turn off the kill cam, because every time the kill cam goes into action, it messes with the camera, and that's not fun. And autosave and journal, head bob amount. You want to turn off your head bob, turn it all the way down. Head bob is not pleasant in the Rift, normally. Chain climbing relative to camera. I don't know what that... Is that something I want off? I'm going to not screw with it for now. User interface. A bunch of this stuff I've turned off because in the Rift you cannot see things that are in the corners of your view. Like in the upper left, upper right, lower right. They're just invisible because they're outside of your field of view. You can only see things toward the center of the screen. Or at least you can only clearly see them. And so I've turned off anything that appears in the corner, anything that I can turn off. And that includes, I've also turned off objective markers. If you're playing for the first time, you'll want to leave these on because they tell you where to go. I've left them off just because they're distracting and I already know where to go. And crosshair style, I set to simple. By default, it's set to normal. Normal crosshair looks like this.
Or damaged time cards will
It's
no
a
longer
much bigger crosshair, especially in VR. It looks like it's taking up like 10 degrees of your vision. So that's just annoying. But I do still like to have a crosshair because it helps a lot with aiming. So that's why I leave it set to the simple crosshair. If you have really good aim, or then you can try and turn it off altogether. But I find it almost impossible to hit someone from a distance when that's off. Where'd that go? Simple. Alright. And I'm going to turn down the opacity of it a bit. Yeah. There we go. And that's about it. I have shown you all of my settings now. And you could replicate this setup if you wanted. Keep in mind I am on dual GTX 980. So these same settings might not produce as good an experience for you on your system. The final thing I want to show you, which probably will work better on a system that is not as good, is in the vorpX settings. I'm going to go to the main page, and I'm going to change geometry 3D mode to off. Now with geometry 3D mode off, if you look in the upper left corner, my frame rate has absolutely jumped pretty much to the highest available frame rate. Yeah, I'm not quite getting a steady 75, but I'm getting consistently above 60, and it is very smooth and it feels great. It's much less nauseating. The downside is that there is no stereoscopy. So things that are very close to me, like my hands,
Things are
They
bad.
don't appear
Could the city get any
stereoscopically
worse?
closer. There are other depth cues like parallax. Like if I move like this, I can still see how close and far away things are relative to each other. But it's only when I'm moving that I can really tell, or when I'm turning my head. When I'm just like standing still and looking around, everything looks really flat. So this is what happens when there's no stereoscopy. There's also the problem that there's no positional tracking. So if I press up against this wall, I lean left, I lean right. That was right then left. This will stay right where it is. And it feels like the world is kind of leaning with me when I lean my body, or leaning away from me when I lean in or out. And that's definitely not desirable. So if you want positional tracking and you want stereoscopy, you're going to have to deal with the low frame rate that comes with Geometry 3D mode. And I think Geometry 3D is more fun to watch on YouTube, so I'm going to leave it in this mode. But I actually recommend, if you play it yourself, that you should probably play it with in no stereo mode, because it's just a much smoother, much less sickening experience. I have a very high tolerance for VR sickness, and most other people's are not as high as mine.
Should we gather for whiskey and cigars tonight?
That's
Yes,
the
of
settings.
course.
Now, it's time to visit the guy in the boat. He is sitting out there in his boat. I don't know what he's doing there, but I think he wants to talk to me. Let's walk on this whale here. Oh, check it out. I'm walking on a whale. Walking on its blubbery, shiny skin. This is so cool. Check out that fin. Ah, the frame rate drops so much when I look up at the base. Okay. Let's visit boat guy.
You're
Dowd.
Dowd. Shit, I hope you ain't here for me. I'm just a little fish in a big pond.
I want to know about a ship. The Delilah.
Yeah, I heard of it. Listen, maybe we can help each other out. I work for a very rich man who's keen on seeing Rothwild's business go belly up. This whole business with the strike, our doing. We got a mole on the inside, a lady pretending to run the labor crews, a real talent. She could lie straight to the High Overseer's face and get away with it. We were supposed to meet up last night. I've been spying on the place all day waiting to hear word. Only I haven't seen or heard a peep. I was about to shove off. If you're here to make a little mayhem anyway, maybe you could find her. If she's still alive, she'd be able to get you everything you need to know about that ship. No question. And a substantial reward besides. Her name's Abigail Ames.
So this guy... Ooh, I'm going to steal your gun. Thank you. This guy tells me about Abigail Ames. One thing I want you to notice that they fixed in the new version of vorpX is they fixed it so that when you talk to somebody, it doesn't zoom in on their face and give you like this really narrow field of view. And that's actually much preferable in VR. You really want to have the field of view at all times constant in VR and all times matching the field of view of the Rift itself. And that's the render target here is about 120 degrees. You just want to stay at 120 degrees all the time. And they do a great job of that with this F4 mod that they added. So just whenever you see it at any other FOV, hit F4, you're good to go. That does mean that when you talk to people, they look very pixely and kind of far away. Like I could not even see his eyes when I was talking to him. But if I get up close to him here, I can see him better.
I tried sneaking in by the sewers, the runoff tunnels under the slaughterhouse. Almost had my nuts fried off. Lord Ramsey will have my head if this doesn't work.
So he's told me about Abigail Adams, who is a spy for a competitor who is organizing labor unions on the inside to cause trouble. And I wanted to show you some of the other things that vorpX has fixed since I originally played Dishonored in vorpX. If I jump in the water here, I can swim. I can swim and I don't even have to close one eye like I used to have to do. It actually looks reasonable. And it feels nice. And I don't know how they fixed this, because I used to get different images in each eye while swimming in Dishonored, and now it looks nice. It looks reasonable. And so I'm very happy with that. Another big improvement they've made, if we bring out Void Gaze, so this is like this is like your gaze ability from the original Dishonored, except it's a little bit different. The Haunted Eyes. And it enables you to look around and find items and people. And Dowd's ability actually replaces the heart, which Corvo had, which helped him to find runes and bone charms. Dowd's ability also allows him to find runes and bone charms, but without using the heart. He just uses this ability. And you'll notice that there is no, like in the original Dishonored, in vorpX, there was that, in DK1, there was that weird effect where each eye looked different when I used that ability, and it was totally unusable. And now it's pretty much fine. I can use it, and it's quite useful. I'm not going to plan to use that one a lot, because it does prevent you from admiring the nice scenery in its full color glory. But I will definitely get that one, because it's very useful and handy to have around. Anyway, that is it for this episode. I have not gotten very far in this episode. I've pretty much just gotten from there down to this boat. But I showed you all my settings, and I showed you the improvements in vorpX since I originally played Dishonored on DK1, and now I'm ready to invade Rothwile Slaughterhouse. So without further ado, I will see you guys next time, and let me know any thoughts you have about this series, and everybody have a great every day.